It's not just headlines anymore, it's happening. Canada just passed a sweeping series of new laws targeting trade, energy, and agriculture. On the surface, it may look like a domestic policy shift, but for 6 U.S. states, this might be the breaking point. These laws, quietly approved in early July 2025, are already disrupting supply chains, hitting tourism hard, and threatening major industries from Detroit to Miami. One state is bracing to lose over $3 billion on tourism revenue. Another could see its entire dairy sector collapse. And the most shocking part? Almost no one is talking about it. In this video, we're counting down the 6 U.S. states most vulnerable to Canada's 2025 policy wave. If you live in one of them or know someone who does, you need to watch this. And if you're someone who wants to stay ahead of the real changes shaping our future, hit like and subscribe before your state ends up on the list. So what exactly did Canada pass? And why is it hitting the United States so hard this year? First, Canada's Parliament fast-tracked a massive infrastructure package. It unlocked over 16 billion Canadian dollars for projects like pipeline expansion, hydroelectric upgrades, and new Arctic port rail connections. But this wasn't just about energy. It was about regional dominance in trade. This move gives Canada greater export power and reduces its dependence on American imports. Second, Canada repealed its controversial digital services tax. This tax repeal saved U.S. tech giants billions of dollars. But now Canada is pushing for bigger trade concessions in return. What looked like a gift has turned into a power play. Third, and perhaps most explosive, Canada permanently locked in its dairy supply management system. This essentially shuts American farmers, especially in states like Wisconsin, out of one of their largest export markets. These moves weren't random. They were strategic. They are already reshaping cross-border trade, damaging U.S. exports, and fueling a new wave of retaliatory tariffs. But not every U.S. state is feeling the fallout equally. Some are far more exposed, and the collapse has already begun. Number 6, New York. When you think of New York, Wall Street and Broadway come to mind. But behind the scenes, New York heavily relies on Canadian electricity. About 23% of New York's imported power comes from Quebec's hydro plants. But with Canada's new energy policies, internal energy demand is being prioritized. That means less power for New York and higher prices for what remains. And it doesn't stop there. With the repeal of the digital tax, U.S. tech firms benefited, briefly. Now Canada wants trade-offs, and digital trade rules are tightening. New York's fintech startups and data centers are starting to feel the pressure. As energy costs rise and digital barriers grow, New York's razor-thin business margins are vanishing. If that trend continues, job losses won't just hit Manhattan, they'll ripple across the entire state. Number 5, Minnesota. Minnesota's economy runs on two things, agriculture and energy, and both are being hit hard. Let's start with farming. Minnesota relies heavily on Canadian potash, a mineral vital for crop growth. But under Canada's new infrastructure laws, those exports are being redirected. In just 3 months, potash prices in Minnesota have surged over 20%. That increase hits every part of the food supply chain, from farms to grocery stores. Now let's talk heating fuel. Minnesota's long winters make it heavily reliant on stable, affordable energy, most of which comes from Canada. But with more oil and gas being diverted for domestic Canadian use or Arctic export, supplies to the U.S. are shrinking. That means heating bills for homes, schools, and hospitals are rising fast. Farms are caught in a double bind, higher costs to grow food and higher costs to stay warm. The cities aren't immune either. Minneapolis and St. Paul are bracing for steep winter energy hikes. Minnesota isn't collapsing overnight, but the pressure is mounting fast. Number 4, Wisconsin. Wisconsin is America's dairy powerhouse, top in cheese, and a major player in milk exports. But that title is now under threat. Canada's 2025 dairy law has locked out U.S. dairy completely. It's not just tariffs, it's structural. Quota systems now give full preference to Canadian dairy producers. That leaves Wisconsin farmers frozen out. The result? In just 1 quarter, producers lost dozens of contracts with Canadian buyers. Milk prices are falling locally, while costs to produce are rising. Big co-ops may survive, but family-owned farms, they're being crushed. And when these farms fold, entire rural economies suffer. Truckers, packaging plants, diners. Everyone feels the blow. This wasn't just an export sector. It was the backbone of the local economy. And now it's buckling. Number 3, Florida. Florida sees over 3 million Canadian tourists every year. They rent homes, fill hotels, visit beaches, and flood theme parks. But not this year. Canada has retaliated with soft travel restrictions and a quiet boycott. The impact? Winter bookings are down more than 70%. Hotels sit empty. Restaurants close early. Rental properties go vacant. In places like Naples, Fort Lauderdale, and Sarasota, the economic hit is severe. But it's not just tourism. Florida's real estate market, especially short-term and seasonal properties, is cracking. With fewer northern buyers and renters, property values are slipping and defaults are ticking up. For a state reliant on a booming high season, this isn't a downturn, it's a rupture. And unless U.S.-Canada relations improve, that rupture could become permanent. Number 2, Ohio. Ohio is a manufacturing state, especially in autos and steel. Its cities like Cleveland and Toledo depend on Canadian parts and raw materials. But Canada's new laws have shifted trade patterns and triggered U.S. retaliation. The result? A 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum. But instead of helping Ohio, these tariffs are choking it. Supply chains are stalled. Materials are arriving late and at inflated prices. Factories are running at reduced shifts. Quiet layoffs are already happening. And that hurts everything from tool shops to local diners. To make matters worse, rising fuel costs, thanks to Canada's Arctic pivot, are slamming transportation and logistics. Ohio was already walking a tightrope. Now it's losing balance and falling. Number 1, Michigan. If one state is facing full-blown economic disaster from Canada's policies, it's Michigan. Michigan is deeply tied to Canada. Over 27% of its exports go north of the border. That includes auto parts, aluminum, and steel, all industries now trapped in a trade war. With Canada rerouting energy and goods to internal and Arctic markets, delays and cost spikes are hammering Michigan. Detroit, Flint, and Dearborn states are already seeing production cuts. Ford, GM, and Stellantis have warned employees of long-term supply disruptions. New hiring has slowed. Some facilities are cutting back shifts. And when Michigan's auto sector slows down, the effects are massive. Entire towns built around factories begin to fracture. Meanwhile, consumer prices rise. Local governments brace for lower tax revenues. Community banks report more loan defaults. Michigan isn't just vulnerable, it's ground zero. What happens next here may be a preview of what's coming for the rest of the Midwest. Beauty. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't just about Canada. It's about a new kind of cross-border pressure, and the U.S. states cracking under it. Like this video, subscribe for more updates, and tell us in the comments, is your state on the list, or do you think it should be?